Well, come back to Ami's house. Michael.
You had a fun weekend.
Well, it happened. Went back into the Lion's Den for round 2 of Candace Owens, and this will be our post game of that. Now, this involved, as you saw, a Israel-Palestine debate with 2 Jewish comedians, me and Dave Smith.
Did she change the title of the video from the Great Jewish Debate to the Great Debate?
I think...
Or was that just in a tweet?
I think it was just a tweet. I don't think the YouTube thing, which was funny because the whole time this is not about Jews, it's about Israel, and then it's the Great Jewish Debate. But listen, a lot of people, you could say like it's tokenism having 2 Jews just duke it out, or some people say, and the anti-Semites in the comments came out right away saying, why are 2 Jews discussing this? Where's the Arab representative or whatever? But there's something to be said, first of all, about the staging of it all. There's an interesting element to that, and also like I think in a way of trying to say you can't say there's an element of this that's anti-Semitic here if the 2 of us are talking as Jews about this topic, so that's kind of fair in a sense, because I think it's just obvious. I'm a Jewish comedian who's not a professional historian or scholar, and I don't claim to be, and Dave is first and foremost a comedian who's Jewish. And I think I'll say something about him from the get-go, and then I want to get your response to it and your feedback. But Dave is passionate, very well-informed, and well-intentioned, which makes him very formidable. And he's very experienced on like the debate side of things, debating impassioned intellectual topics, foreign policy. That I'm interested in that stuff as well, but to the extent that he's really in that world, very much so. So I wanted to go in kind of curious about his positions on things, and I know it was inevitably going to be a debate. So, yeah, what'd you think? How'd I do?
Well, you want to start there because I want to hear how you think how you think you did before I tell you how I think you did.
Okay, I'll give you the sort of
How do you
the scenes of what's going on what's going on.
Well, there's 2 parts of it. There's the what's it like to be someone who did that and then eats dinner with his family, like just for personally what that experience is like, and then how do you think you did as a debater?
Right
here. So start with the debate.
What's it like to be that, or how was the what's?
Start with what was it just like to it went up on Friday. Right. Shabbos started an hour or so later. You turn your phone off, I assume.
The most anxiety part of it is not knowing, in terms of my perception of how it went in real time, with how I actually did. Not knowing that, and that waiting period was pretty nerve-wracking because I was like, wanted to make sure I first of all, you want to make sure you do well in these big public forums, but also that I felt like I did the best that I could do in a sense. And I'll say this, like with these kinds of conversations and these debates, the hardest thing is you want to be prepared, but you don't want to be performative.
Were there any other points you wish you would have made? Like any other parts where watching back, like what?
I mean, when we got into the weeds about hostages and negotiating and stuff like that, there was one thing.
Did they bring up hostages?
Oh, yeah.
Did he bring up hostages?
Yeah. He said something about he gave an example of like if a bank robber or someone took a hostage, what would we do to get the hostage
that was
back?
So I'll get into my opinion about it, but yeah.
When he said that, we would not go and blow up the place, and I sort of said like, no, the responsibility of a government is to protect its own civilians, so they wouldn't destroy the whole place. But then I said like, he drew an analogy of that to say, he said something like, better to let our legal youth. I said I brought up the idea of hostage exchange for prisoner exchange.
The conviction thing.
Yeah, I said the word conviction, just like talking loosely, but the truth is I'm not sure how it's processed there. That's not quite the point. This presumption is they don't have jurisprudence and they don't have a due process and all these things. My point was how they adjudicate that stuff in the West Bank when they arrest Palestinians. My point was the Palestinians, the reason they're arrested is not because of their identity. It's because of their actions. They've committed violent crimes, so they're arrested. They're not taken hostage or kidnapped. And I was trying to just draw a distinction between that and hostage takers. And then when I said in terms of exchange and why that's a terrible thing, I was trying to ask him, do you think that's a good thing to exchange one hostage for 1,000 prisoners? He said, absolutely. It's the foundation of Western civilization. Better to let one innocent person go free than what's the phrase? He said, better to let one guilty man go free than 1,000 innocent people go to jail. Something along those lines. Like, that's how our justice system works.
Not literally, though.
No, he's like, better to let one.
He said,
right? That's the phrase. Better to let 10 guilty men go free than one innocent person go to jail. That's like
something like
closer
that.
to the phrase. But these aren't 10 presumed guilty or presumed innocent people. We know what these prisoners have done. Like, well, they in other words,
I'm not going to argue the point, but
No, in a court of law, presumed innocence and we presume innocent until proven guilty, because we don't know. But in a lot of these cases, we're talking about violent criminals who've stabbed Israelis at cafes or tried to commit violent acts, so they've been arrested and detained. That's not the same thing as in a court of law when we're adjudicating who's guilty and who's innocent. We know hostages being taken are innocent.
Right.
And even though there hasn't maybe been a preceding trial like we know of in the West of the typical standard, Israelis are arresting people who've committed violent actions already. So what I wanted to ask him as one follow-up to that, and sometimes you can't because the conversation keeps moving, is, and what if, Dave, that hostage taker asked for 1,000 violent criminals to be released? Would you think we should do that? Should the police say, okay? What if he asked for 1,000 terrorists to be released and to let that hostage go? Like, because he's like, absolutely, just negotiate. We negotiate. That's what we do. And I'm just, and then I didn't take it further. I'm like, well, we'll follow that to its logical conclusion. Like, what if he asked for 1,000 prisoners to be released who were guilty of violent crimes? Mm-hmm. Like, then the devil's in the details when you just say negotiating is the only way.
He also, like, for a libertarian, he has like a lot of like policies of how things should be done, not just like let the situation evolve as it should.
Yeah. And I mean, we can get into him. I think we can get into him specifically, and I have questions for him because and his positions. I'd love to save that for an episode where we talk to him one-on-one. I think it could be productive. Enough. But anyway,
were there any other points though that you wanted
to? Yes. I think when he said, like, at the end of the day, there have always been atrocities committed by governments and regimes, and there will always be people who rationalize it. And I would have just said back to him, if I could, having the last word. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you've made it this far, we want to let you know that Ami's House is now on Patreon. We love doing extra content, bonus footage with every episode. The best way to support us is to head on over to Patreon, become a guest, and support the show for $5 a month.
If you like watching Ami cut me off, Patreon is
patreon.com/Ami's House for bonus content. Thanks so much for your support, and become a guest.